This is an amazing talk between Professor Jeffrey Sachs and former Finance Minister of Greece, Yanis Varoufakis. In this video, Professor Sachs explains in detail why the United States of America is going to lose the trade war with China. Trump's tariffs are not going to work on China, and more importantly, the US dollar's exorbitant privilege is going to diminish too. Watch the video now. I think in the end, but it's a close call, but I think in the end the world trading system will go forward without the United States. Basically that the end of all of this is US isolation with the rest of the world, basically continuing along even the formal rules of the World Trade Organization. Trump has something quite different in mind, which is that the US remains at the center of the power and the center of the system. And even that, and they've been quite explicit about this, that other countries will fall into line with the United States against China, so not merely fall into line with the US, but will actually join the trade war against China. No doubt that is a major goal in Washington right now, at least of some of this administration and much of the political scene. There's an overwhelming anti-China vision in Washington, and the idea that other countries will join against China is their hope. The reason I think it's not likely is that if you take a hard look at what real economic power the United States still maintains, it's nowhere close to what Trump believes. Trump's idea is that the US market is so central to every economy that basically the leverage that the United States gets over the threat of cutting other countries out of the US is enough to get them to do America's foreign policy bidding. That may have been true 25 years ago. I think it's an anachronistic view today, and the reason is simply the numbers. The US imports are just not big enough for most countries to say that they're going to shift their whole foreign policy and economic orientation because of a US threat. And I also believe that Trump maybe accept Germany, right? Maybe accept Germany. Germany is so dependent on the US market, unlike other countries, so there are countries clearly where this is the case, and Mexico is an example of this, or Canada is an example of this. I mean, of course they can say what they want, but in the end, they have 70% of their exports going to the US market, and so there are countries like that, but there aren't many countries like that actually. The US as a whole in its imports is roughly 12 or 13% of worldwide imports. The market is not big enough. The idea that has been floating around recently is that as the US blocks China, China will flood Europe with its goods. And by doing so, Europe will put up barriers and effectively have to join the US in an anti-China move. If you look at those numbers, it's actually not the case. China exports right now about $450 billion a year to the United States. It's not so big, by the way. It's come down a lot because there's been 10 years of anti-China policies, even starting with Obama, but during Trump and during Biden. So China's already diversified substantially. Can I put a hypothesis to you for you to comment? It simply adds to everything you said because I happen to agree. Look, the hegemony of the United States given, based not despite but based on its deficits, this is the great paradox of the last 50 years. Hegemony based on deficits is hanging by a thread, and the thread is the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. So the internationalization of the renminbi is going to be what really severs that thread. And the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because Beijing has not decided to do it. My hypothesis is this: if Trump continues to push them, then would it not make sense for Beijing to turn the BRICS not just from a loose conglomeration with an alternative to SWIFT, which they have already created with BRICS Pay, based on a remarkable blockchain technology, but to actually imitate the Bretton Woods system with the renminbi in the role that the dollar did to anchor this alternative new Bretton Woods system. Because people say to me that that can't happen when you have capital controls. Well, it did under Bretton Woods. You can have a system where you have a surplus country at its heart. It was the United States in 1944. It could be China today with capital controls with certain constraints which allow for Beijing to maintain control over its financial sector, not to throw open the gates. And that for me would be the greatest danger for the exorbitant privilege of the dollar. Thank you everyone for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.